Students sitting in for the C and D series of the baccalaureate examinations in the French subsystem of education have today recited physics and chemistry as instructed by the Ministry of Secondary Education. The exams were called off by the supervisory authorities after the questions leaked out to the public. Our reporter Ladonet Oni Ondesa was at the government bilingual high school Daido. She will be telling us the conduct of the examinations. The Dwala City Council launches week-long activities to commemorate the death of King Dwala Mangabel, his 106th anniversary of his death. The Dwala king was killed by the Germans for resisting the German annexation of Cameroon, and the death of Tato Steven brings to the table the disturbing issue of the status of former Indomitable Lions. These players who gave their colors for the national team always live in penury after plying their trade. John Paul Sama spoke with some former footballers on the issue. We shall be hearing from them in this newscast. Those are top stories. Good evening and thanks for joining us. You're watching the Primetime Newscast on STV. Students of the C2 and IT series of the baccalaureate examination in the French subsystem of education have today recited physics and chemistry as instructed by the Ministry of Secondary Education. The exams were called off after questions leaked out to the public. Our reporter Ladonet Oni Ondesa was at the government bilingual high school Daido here in Dwala and sought to know the conduct of the examinations. Her report.
In order to ensure a hitch-free examination, an upgraded security was put in place today, August 3, 2020, at the government bilingual high school Daido in the Dwala 1 municipality. The students of Terminal rallied up to recite physics and other subjects at the baccalaureate exams on the C, D, TI series in the French subsystem of education.
Welcome to GBHS Daido. Today in my school, because of the leakage for the examination of baccalaureate general education, we are repeating a few subjects for the two series, the D and the C series. They are repeating some subjects, physics, chemistry and biology. We have just reinforced the security. So there is a thorough check through the gates, and normally they are seated 24 a class, and we want to be very strict this time.
Physics was the first paper of the day, followed by chemistry and life sciences to be written tomorrow, 4th of August.
We are having today 2 subjects and tomorrow 1 subject, and the system has changed. It is this morning that we received the question papers for the morning session, and in the afternoon we are going to receive the afternoon session, then tomorrow in the morning the last session.
Regardless of the discomfort brought in by the decision to receive these exams, some students, however, are in high spirit. There was a lot of disorder, judging from the fact that we had given our best for the first time, and rewriting it is really disturbing us. I prepared well because even before writing other subjects, I was ready. So I'm not afraid today, but I was annoyed because I was sure I had finished with the exams. But since I was ready, I just kept revising. The news on the cancellation of the examinations was announced on the 24th of July in a communique by the Minister of Secondary Education, Professor Pauline Nalova Lyunga, on the basis of examination fraud.
The former deputy mayor of Dwala, Jean-Robert Wafo, has lashed out at a recent presidential decree regulating the appointments of regional and municipal treasurers in the country. According to the SDF Shadow Cabinet Minister of Information and Communication, Article 439 of the Decentralization Code has to be reviewed. Josephine Binzi tells us more.
The hypothesis of public funds and how it ought to be spent, the Ministry of Finance carries the responsibility of nominating the beneficiaries of the regional beneficiaries. Jean-Robert Wafo, who is the Minister of Communication at the Social Democratic Front Cabinet, has in this light highlighted the General Code of Decentralization, which has to be revised by Article 439. This is to say that other terms of this law has to be modified by the two chambers in Parliament. This prerogative by Jean-Robert Wafo seeks to clear the air of the contradictions. The political figure draws strength from the decree of the President of the Republic on the accountability of public funds. There has been a question mark looming in the air as to who will be nominated to receive in the 360 district municipalities. While some say it's the Minister of Finance, others say the ministry in charge of territorial communities. It is worthy of note that many suggestions have been raised on the law of decentralization before the signing of the presidential decree on the 7th of July 2020. This has been cited in Article 439, Section 3. For the SDF militants, the presidential decree violates certain dispositions of the law according to the General Code of Territorial Communities. To justify his claims, he evokes the minister in charge of decentralization and local development, nominating the recipients of the various district municipalities. Jean-Robert Wafo, however, calls on the collaboration between these two ministries for effective work to be done and the ambitions of the states to be realized. He says effective decentralization is the route Cameroon needs for a better tomorrow.
Now, FINEX bus agencies has finally resumed operations 10 days after it was sealed by authorities, where a gendarmerie officer was killed over a squabble on the usage of the company's toilets. The seals were removed yesterday by the SDO for Wuri Benjamin Butu. Our reporter Oni Ladonet Ondesa was there and sought to know how business kicked off. Her report.
After 10 dark days, FINEX Travel Agency has finally resumed its activities. This was made possible after the seal was uplifted on the 2nd of August by the Senior Divisional Officer for Wuri, Benjamin Butu. This tragic incident has served as a wake-up call for management as they intend improving their customer service.
C'est dans un esprit de se repenser, de se revoir, de se mirer un peu.
It's a spirit of rethink, review. The tragic incident that took place on the 22nd is a wake-up call to our way of acting and some loopholes in our structure. Because it should be recalled that FINEX has really invested in road safety, quality of transport vehicles, quality drivers, and buildings. FINEX thought the dangers will come out from outside, but the dangers were right behind him. That is why our week is invested towards pointing out our shortcomings, so they don't get to repeat themselves again.
Notre semaine est de revoir tous nos manquements pour que le contrôle soit à 360 degrés afin que plus jamais ça à FINEX voyage.
Customers of this agency are happy to once more benefit from their services. We are happy about the reopening. It's a good thing. It's the best agency.
C'est la meilleure agence. Je suis confiant que les choses vont aller.
I am confident that things will work out well since it has reopened. You can see how people are struggling because I know that we are the leaders, regardless of the tragic incident that obstructed everything. But I'm confident all will be fine. However, resumption was timid.
Alors, nous c'est encore timide parce qu'après 10 jours d'arrêt,
it's still timid. Because after 10 days of closure, the reopening is still slow. But we hope it will get better, so we can continue serving Cameroonians for their comfort and pleasure, so the journey can be peaceful.
Camerounais pour la sécurité et pour leur confort, afin que le voyage soit paisible.
Toilet services are now free at FINEX, which was the origin of the tragic July 22nd incident.
The city of Dwala has very few and poorly kept toilets, a situation which makes the usage of these facilities problematic For many, Crystal Asexuele has been examining the situation and puts her findings in the following report.
People who are hard-pressed in public often have little option but to defecate in inappropriate places. The urge to ease oneself often comes without much warning. Here in Dwala, economic capital of Cameroon, public toilets are hard to find, and if found, prepare to have with you 100 or 50 francs coins to pay, depending on which nature's call you are pressed with.
En effet, ça c'est des toilettes publiques commerciales.
Effectively, these are public commercial toilets. There is someone who is in charge of them. I am just giving a helping hand to the owner of the toilet. To ease oneself here is 150 francs, depending on which nature's call you want to. Sometimes we have clients who don't have money with them but want to use the toilet. We let them depending on their behavior. Others just want to impose on us that it's free. And there is also the issue of change. Someone can come with 1,000 francs and does not have change. We let them go. Dwala has few but very poorly maintained outdoor toilets that discourage, thus promoting a surge in the incidence of infectious diseases and other woeful sanitary conditions. Like this inhabitant, she prefers to hold it until she gets to her home. I prefer to hold it until I get home, although it's dangerous for the health due to the filthiness, and sometimes it's so dark in there one can get harassed. There is therefore an urgent need for government's sanitation program to bring about cleanliness and much needed behavioral changes to turn this everyday public amenity to an object of civic pride. Effectively, these are public commercial toilets. There is someone who is in charge of them. I am just giving a helping hand to the owner of the toilet. To ease oneself here is 150 francs, depending on which nature's call you want to.
Elites of Nkam Division in the Litwa region have hailed government's move to create a forest management unit. Despite criticisms from some segments of the population, Honorable Samuel Mood says that the move is a positive one as it will bring development to their communities through the creation of roads and the exploitation of the Ebo Forest Reserve. Details in this report.
The creation of a forest management unit as opposed to a national park at the Ebo Forest in the Nkam Division will not only permit the development of the area but also allow locals to live in the zone while benefiting from the resources of the forest through its exploitation.
Déjà, ça nous permet de rentrer chez nous. Le bonheur, c'est d'être chez soi. Après, maintenant, si nous sommes déjà chez nous, on peut se débrouiller.
It is going to ensure that we return home, and this project will also bring some economic activities to the area. This model, which has been arrived at by the government and the company in forestry, will permit us have roads. Apart from the infrastructures it will come with, there are some added benefits to the locals.
Inhérent même au projet, il y a des périphéries, des effets induits qui feront qu'il n'y a que du bonheur en réalité.
Even the chiefs of the Banen community in this zone are anxious to return to their villages and rule as the law permits.
Si le décret du chef de l'État actuellement nous permet que l'UEFA arrive, nous c'est la bienvenue parce que nous aurons des routes.
This is a welcome decision from the state, which will enable us have roads that can take us back to our villages, which we abandoned a long time ago. The decree reorganizing traditional chiefdoms in the country states that a chief has to reside in his community. With the arrival of the UFA, I think the chiefs will return.
Je pense que les chefs ne seront plus errants, ils seront résidents conformément au décret de 1977.
The Forest Management Unit UFA comes with a plan of development and working specifications as to what the law orders with the preservation of fauna and flora.
J'ai vraiment loué, j'ai loué l'initiative du député Maud Samuel qui est d'abord une très bonne initiative.
I love this initiative as a youth leader because this is going to pave the way for development, and we can't be in a forest and work without roads. It is almost 50 years without development, and if today Samuel Mout and the state thinks it's time to send investors here, then we can only accompany them.
De ce côté, pour développer notre localité, vraiment on ne peut que louer cette idée.
Even though some elites oppose this planned exploitation of the Ebo forest, they have been reassured that the process is going to be carried out rigorously without anyone on the losing end.
The 106th commemoration of the death of King Rudolph Dwala Mangabel has been launched in the presence of the Littoral Governor Samuel Jodone Ivaha Diboa today. As Christel Asek-Swele tells us, the initiative, which will run for 1 week, was born by the Dwala City Council. Her report.
Every year, the Dwala people commemorate the death of Dwala Mangabel, the king of the Dwala people in Cameroon during the German colonial period, who was executed by hanging in August 8, 1914, for his resistance against the eviction of the Dwala people from their ancestral homes. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis restrictions, this year's commemorations will be carried out differently. The present context we live in today has imposed on us certain restrictions and rules to abide to. Reason why this year's commemoration of the Tete Ekombo celebrations will be different from the previous. We will stretch the celebrations for a week to avoid large gatherings and crowds. That's how we will go about it. Launched today, August 3, 2020, in the presence of the governor of the Littoral region, Samuel Ivaha Diboa, accompanied by some Dwala traditional chiefs and certain associations, this at the esplanade of the annex of the Regional Delegation of Transport, formerly the first police station of the German administration. Then, there was the laying of the wreath of flowers at the spot where this hero was assassinated. The commemorations this year will be peculiar as everyone will be involved. The peculiarity of this year's commemoration is that everyone will be involved in the celebrations. Unlike before, it was said that the family and village have grabbed the whole thing to themselves. Today, the commemorations will be open to all the Dwala people since it's a special event. Since Rudolph Mangabel didn't just belong to the Sawa people, but to the entire Cameroon people. The commemoration celebrations will continue until August 8, 2020 with other communities and activities.
In health, let's talk weight loss. Excess weight remains the main cause of cardiovascular diseases, and majority dealing with it are women. Our reporter Josephine Binzi caught up with a nutritionist who tells us what it takes to lose weight and achieve the appropriate body mass index. Her report.
The Massachusetts Obesity Report reveals that in 2019, almost 55% of women in the world within the age range of 22 to 55 are struggling with obesity, which is the leading cause of diabetes and other cardiovascular diseases. There are, however, many important factors to note when trying to lose weight.
Consider is the profession, the occupation of the person. Is it the doctor? Is it an architect? Is it the student? The life stage of the person. So these are the first things to consider by a person who needs to lose the weight.
As much as many will take upon themselves for a weight loss journey, the help of a professional is very imperative.
Has to be done with a professional, because the professional is able to know which is the cause.
The weight loss journey is an embodiment of many factors, as the nutritionist explains further.
The role of professional is to adjust the lifestyle, the thinking of the person, the eating style of the person according to the...
Linda, an inhabitant of the city of Dwala, has a much different approach to her weight loss regimen, as exercise was her most powerful weapon.
Aucune assistance. Je suis allée toute seule.
I had no assistance as I went on this journey all alone. I didn't consume any weight loss drink. I wasn't assisted by any nutritionist, but I must confess that I was tempted to do so during my journey, as I thought about it many times. Anytime I tried going with a nutritionist, I would be restricted not to eat many things. And in all the things they restricted me from eating, they permitted me to constantly exercise. So I became very interested in exercises, and I saw no need to deprive myself from good food if I could do sports. Weight loss or gain has to be a direct correlation to the individual's age and height, which will require the assistance of a professional to achieve the exact body mass index. A reduction in the consumption of fatty food, late-night meals, and too much sugar can be of help to anyone dealing with overweight.
Out of the country, several prominent Republicans have formed a political action committees whose objective is to defeat Republican President Donald Trump in November's U.S. general elections. We have details with the VOA.
We have it totally under control. One person coming in from China.
At first glance, this might seem to be an ad made by Democrats to attack Republican President Donald Trump.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
But the Lincoln Project is a political action committee started by a group of prominent Republicans who are working to defeat one of their own, President Trump. Among them, attorney George Conway, husband of Kellyanne Conway, one of the president's closest advisors.
I don't know him. He's a whack job, there's no question about it, but I really don't know him. I think he's doing a tremendous disservice to a wonderful wife. Kellyanne is a wonderful woman, and I call him Mr. Kellyanne.
Lincoln Project videos take aim at President Trump's policies, pronouncements, and temperament.
They're getting into Donald Trump's head, which I think is a good thing.
Jimmy Tosh is the CEO of one of America's top pork producers. The lifelong Republican is donating to the Lincoln Project to defeat President Trump.
I probably agree with about 80% of what he's doing, but from a morality standpoint, I cannot stand a liar. I can't stand a vindictive individual.
The Lincoln Project is completely irrelevant.
Chris Wilson is CEO for WPA Intelligence, a Republican polling and data analytics firm. He is concerned the Lincoln Project is slamming not just the president, but also Senate Republicans, whose majority is imperiled.
If their conscience tells them that they need to oppose Donald Trump, well, so be it. I mean, I can respect that. But the way in which they are now focusing on Senate seats tells me this is not ideological in its nature. It is more about it's about ego and it's about money.
The Lincoln Project raised nearly $20 million by the end of June. Tennessee hog farmer Jimmy Tosh wants to defeat Trump as well as the president's allies in the Republican Party.
Well, I'm a little disappointed in the Republican Party for the amount of enablers that we have in the Republican Party for the Trumpism. I am not going to support any Republican candidate on the national level for this year.
If you're worried about policy at all, I'm much more comfortable with still there being a Republican majority in the Senate.
Rob Stutzman is a Republican political consultant in California. He has written that Trump should be defeated and says political action committees like Republican Voters Against Trump focus on just that.
They're more or less creating this permission gateway for Republicans to feel okay about not voting for the Republican nominee by just showing normal Republican voters giving their testimonials about how they're not going to vote for Donald Trump again, even though they may have in 2016.
Hundreds of people who worked for the 43rd U.S. President, Republican George W. Bush, formed a political action committee to back presumptive Democratic Party nominee Joe Biden. The former vice president will get another endorsement when former Ohio governor and Republican presidential candidate John Kasich addresses the Democratic National Convention in August. Steve Reddish, VOA News, Washington.
Just as we said in our top stories, the demise of a former Indomitable Lions keeper Tato Steven has brought to light the issue of the status of former football greats in the country. These players who gave their all for the national colors live in penury shortly after they leave the football pitch. John Paul Sama met with some former greats and spoke with them about the issue. His report.
A lot of footballers have given blood and sweat to play for their national teams, with some paying the heavy price with their lives defending the colors of the nation at the highest level. But for some who live long enough to tell the tale after their glory days, the picture painted when they drop their boot is never always a rosy one, as the same country they endured thousands of painful minutes for sideline and disdain them as they flounder in the shadows miserably.
Mais pour le cas, tout le monde ne va pas devenir entraîneur. Il y a l'administration, le football comme il me disait toujours.
Not everyone can become a coach or work at the federation. It's true that after Japan, I decided to serve my country, and for over 5 years past at the federation, I didn't have a salary. So if I didn't find my way to Europe, I would have probably ended up in distress.
Ou bien si je n'habitais pas ici, j'aurais peut-être eu la même chose que lui, comme d'autres footballeurs qui souffrent donc.
While others who are lucky enough to have saved up during their playing days are reaping the benefits at their inactive age, with others kept closer.
Pour certains de nous autres, on ne peut pas dire que le gouvernement nous a abandonnés. Personnellement, ça fait 2 fois que je suis en équipe.
For some, they can't say that the government has abandoned them. This is the second time I'm selected as the assistant coach of the Lions. Roger Milla is an ambassador. But the most important thing for us was to do our job. We did it and defended the colors of the nation. Certain decisions were not respected by the government. 30 years later, we can't go back, so we work to continue developing our football.
On ne va pas revenir. On travaille pour reconstruire, pour continuer à développer notre football.
Players have been encouraged to save up while still active. A lot still needs to be done by the state, even though not obligatory, to ensure that legends don't go out in a pathetic fashion.
And that does it for this edition of the Primetime Newscast. Thank you very much for watching. More news comes up at 8 p.m. in the French language. From us, have a good night.